Well, this video was supposed to be a pretty quick thing about Solstice of Heroes, but I kind of got really sidetracked talking about Eververse, which will take up the majority of this video's time. But first, some quick thoughts on Solstice of Heroes. I thought the EAZ was going to be an Infinite Forest ripoff, but it wasn't totally, and I was pleasantly surprised that an entire new area was created for the event. I think the activity is better than any Infinite Forest stuff because you never really needed to go infinitely in the Infinite Forest, whereas the EAZ is 5 minutes of mini-boss hunting, 2 minutes of boss killing, and 2 minutes of chest hunting. Although it can run a little longer depending on which boss you get or if you're forgetful with chests, but otherwise I think the activity is fine. I do like the focus on vertical space. I do think it'll get a slightly bad rap because people are grinding it hard for the armor sets, and they're gonna get bored by it grinding it over and over again. Unfortunately, people are now leaving the activity early because you only need 50 chests but 100 mini boss kills per character for blue armor. So there's no reason to kill the final boss and grab the chests. Not only that, but you need to be around for every mini boss kill for it to count, making the process take longer. It probably should have been maybe 50 mini bosses and 100 chests opened or something like that. It is definitely the most brutal of any of the quest steps. I don't think the armor set grind is terribly unreasonable. It just might feel that way because people like myself and streamer and YouTuber culture has almost normalized grinding these items as fast as humanly possible. Trying to cram in at least 40 strikes, 30 Crucible matches, and 30 Gambit matches into a week is very taxing, and I'm sure it wasn't designed with those intentions. People just want to grind things as fast as possible. I don't know how much the Sparrow is really worth the grind to complete all 3 armor sets though. If the mini Sparrow was the reward for all 3 sets, I think that would be a different story. As for it being that exciting of a grind, no, it's not that exciting at all. Going back to do patrols and adventures, not very exciting, although seeing the world lit up with people again has been a bit refreshing. Doing 10 Gambit games or 30 Gambit games, not really exciting, and the grind itself is not very interesting whatsoever. The biggest controversy that I've seen about Solstice of Heroes, maybe besides the grind, has been the sticker shock of the armor glows in the Eververse store. And this and the Eververse store going into the future will be the main topic of the video. It's gonna be pretty blunt, so just prepare for that. Before we get to that though, I want to talk about some Eververse changes coming to Shadowkeep since we never actually talked about them. The major point for the purposes of this video is that Bright Dust, after Shadowkeep launches, will no longer come from dismantling Eververse items and will instead become a completely pay-to-earn currency via doing Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit bounties for the most part. This absolutely means you should dismantle ships, sparrows, shaders, ghosts, or whatever gives dust that you're not actively using, since after Shadowkeep launches, those items will no longer give you dust. Me personally, I don't need 10 ghosts and 7 insta-summon sparrows per character. I'll be getting rid of that stuff real soon, and I suggest you do the same. My rule of thumb is that if you haven't touched it for 2 or 3 months, you toss it. And let's be honest, are you really swapping your ghost every time you're on a new destination? Are ya? Alright. If you're worried about dismantling Eververse armor, don't be, because part of Armor 2.0 is turning all Eververse armor sets into ornaments called universal ornaments. Any Eververse armor will be able to be applied like an ornament to all Armor 2.0 armor pieces, which is to say, any armor released after Shadowkeep's launch. We don't know if this will be expanded to more armor sets or ornaments in the future, but my guess would be yes, that Eververse is a testing ground for this feature. Finally, Eververse items that are pulled from collections after Shadowkeep launches will use shards and glimmer, not bright dust. Anyway, back to the Solstice armor glows. The armor glows are 5,000 bright dust per element for a total of 15,000 dust for all 3 glows, or 800 silver each, which is $8 per set, or $24 for all of it. I'm going to equate one individual armor glow to that of an exotic armor ornament in terms of value, since they each affect or change one armor piece individually. So, on average, one individual glow, like one helm glow or one leg glow, equals one exotic armor ornament. Is that a fair evaluation? I think if I simplify it the way I just did, then sure. But there are so many variables included in that evaluation. Changes of the looks in exotics, rarity of legendary Solstice armor versus exotics. How cool you might look is completely subjective. Some ornament changes are more significant than others. The fact that glows were a heavy part of marketing. Glows are a different vibe to armor changes. I could go on and on. Now, there's not really a bright dust to silver conversion metric or anything like that, which is part of the frustration. I can buy an exotic ship right now for 2,000 bright dust or 800 silver. I can buy a ghost for 2,850 dust or 800 silver. An exotic sparrow is 2,500 bright dust or 800 silver. I can buy an exotic emote for 3,250 dust or 1,000 silver. I can buy a multiplayer emote for 800 silver or only 1,250 dust. Exotic armor ornaments are 600 silver but 1,950 dust. Weapons are 700 silver, but then they're 1,250 dust. At least the ones in the store as of this video. The prices are all over the place. There's no way to determine any sort of value. Surely weapons are more appealing and thus should cost more dust? But why does everything that costs 800 silver cost varying amounts of dust? Individual Season 7 Eververse armor pieces, at least the class item and arms, cost 800 dust. The helm is 1,200, which means it would cost 4,400 dust for a whole set. Let's say the other pieces cost a little bit more, bring it up to 5,000 dust. But it costs 1,200 silver to buy the whole set in the store. Armor glows are 5,000 dust, but those are 800 silver? The inconsistency is not great, and I'm sure this is going to get cleaned up with Shadowkeep, and if it's not, it should be. That being said, on a personal level, if I have 800 silver, I'm taking the armor glows over other stuff, except for maybe the mini sparrow, because, come on, it's mini. But we need a better system of determining how much dust is equal to X amount of silver. The armor glows have a ratio of 6.25 dust to 1 silver, but an exotic weapon ornament has a ratio of 1.79. In fact, the armor glows have the highest dust to silver ratio of any item in the store, which is why people feel like it costs too much dust, even though, assuming we're still using the one individual glow to one ornament rule I mentioned earlier, I don't really think it's that much. Other ratios are 2.5 for a ship, 3.56 for a ghost, 3.13 for a sparrow, 3.25 for an exotic emote, 1.56 for a multiplayer emote, and 3.25 for exotic armor ornaments. That 6.25 is way higher than everything else, but do we count it as one item because you need to buy it all at once, or 5 items because you technically get 5 items with that one purchase? I assume most of you are going to say 1 item because we can only purchase it that way. But then we have exotic armor ornaments that cost almost 2,000 dust per, and those only affect 1 item, whereas this purchase affects 5. So 5 exotic armor ornaments cost almost 10,000 dust, affect the same amount of items, you can't wear them all at the same time, but cost almost twice as much in dust and almost 4 times as much in silver. So are armor glows overpriced? Are they underpriced? Is everything else wrongly priced? Is anyone else's brain melted? Because mine is too. Let's answer some pretty hot community questions. Would I prefer if the armor glows were earned instead of purchased, or if there was a different glow set earned through gameplay? Absolutely. We could do it last year. There was also an event engram last year, which helped. Yes. Am I happy that I can at least buy those items with bright dust as opposed to spending only real money? Definitely. Having that option is very nice. Should people understand that people who play more are going to have more bright dust than other people? Yeah. If you played a lot during year 1, you probably have a lot of these best of year 1 items already, if not all of them. So, as a result, if you're anything like me, you're getting an exotic item worth 500 dust almost every other engram. Do I think that this is a potential ploy from Bungie to get people to start emptying their coffers in response to bright dust no longer coming from Eververse items and only earned through gameplay? It's certainly possible considering what's going to be happening in the Eververse store in Shadowkeep. Bright Dust only being earned in gameplay and silver through the store is essentially what a lot of mobile games do in terms of monetization. One currency for playing and one for paying. Sub-question to that question, do I think people could have been more patient in spending Bright Dust for tributes at the Tribute Hall? Yes, I do. Do I think part of the issue as well is that you need to pay per element and not per class? Yes. If you only run one character, you still need to buy all 3 glows if you want every element, $24. If it were divided by class, you would need to only buy one set, $8. Not saying that's the easy way out though, because that has its own set of issues as well. Should you be able to buy most of the things in the Eververse store with Bright Dust if you play enough? Yes. The issue is that play enough is completely subjective. What's enough? 10 hours a week? 20? 5? If it's too low, Bungie earns no money from the store. If it's too high, you make a lot of people mad. Do I feel comfortable buying items from the store compared to the last time I made an Eververse video back in November 2017? Yes. In fact, this is the most comfortable I've felt about spending real money in the store in probably the history of the franchise. The game is in a much better state compared to where it was, and more of my money is probably going directly to Bungie now compared to when Activision was around. That being said, I have yet to spend a single cent in the Eververse store in Destiny 2. Finally, do you need to buy Eververse items to play the game? No. Next, a reminder that Legendary Solstice armor will come in an Armor 2.0 variant when Shadowkeep launches, as long as you hit the Legendary level on that armor set, which means the glows will be able to be applied to that Armor 2.0 variant. I've seen this piece of commentary around as well. I don't know where people got the idea that because Bungie is stepping away from Activision, that all of a sudden the Eververse store would disappear. Because Bungie needs the Eververse store now more than ever to sustain them in between releases. Activision is no longer their support beam. They're on their own. Bungie probably also now receives a greater portion of the money from Eververse purchases as a result, making it even more valuable. If there's 2 things I've learned about game development in the 5 to 6 years that I've been doing YouTube, number 1 is that things are way more complicated than they seem, and number 2, things are way more expensive than they seem. Sure, you could lay off a bunch of people at Bungie and then cut the Eververse store altogether or something like that, but that might also mean that we get fewer content updates and that all of the stuff that's in the Eververse store might never exist. It's not like if the store was gone, all future stuff would get thrown into the game as gameplay-based rewards. The stuff might not get made at all. Did you already pay for seasons and expansions? Yes. Have you spent a lot of money on prior releases? Yep. Therefore, it's still annoying to see microtransactions in a fully paid game. I know that Fortnite is a free game. Yes. Warframe does this, Monster Hunter does that. I get it. Every game is different costs, updates, and expectations. But I can tell you why the Eververse store still exists in Destiny, quite simply. Because people keep buying stuff from it. And until enough people stop buying from the store, where the work that goes into the store is more than how much they earn from it, it will stay that way. To be a little more anti-Eververse, part of why people are so miffed at the Eververse store, and probably have been for most of its existence, is because most of the cosmetic options given to us in the game for playing the game don't feel like they're as flashy or unique or as numerous as the offerings in the Eververse store, besides maybe something like the raid armor. We don't see a lot of unique ships, sparrows, ghosts, ornaments to the quality or uniqueness or number of the Eververse store for playing the game or doing difficult challenges or triumphs or whatever. We've seen a couple of emotes like the Callous Lounge and X marks the spot, maybe the exotic ship from Black Armory and a few other things here and there, not much else. If we had ornaments that were earned by doing weapon challenges, people might be more okay with weapon skins being sold in the store. It creates a pressure to look cool, but there aren't as many ways to do it through gameplay. A more minor complaint is that a lot of items do not cost the amount of silver that you're capable of buying. You need 800 silver to buy an item, but the game only sells in blocks of 500 or 1,000. Of course, that is to get you to buy more silver in the future, but I think people would appreciate being able to buy things straight up without a currency playing the middleman. I think this is absolutely the next rude awakening for how things are going to be working out in the Eververse store going forward in the community and in the game. People have wanted more direct purchase options instead of bright engrams filled with pack filler ships and ghost shells, and now we're getting more direct purchase options. Not to mention any new legislation that will be popping up in government that starts to crack down on loot boxes and all that. I'm sure Bungie is trying to get ready for that in case that happens. But the biggest thing people need to understand is that things are priced the way they are because millions of dollars of research has been done to figure out at what price points a company will make the most money. Literally every game does this. Yes, I'm sure it would be more fair to players if things were priced in this way or that way. People have already thought of that, considered it, did an analysis on it, and determined a different way would net more money. What people also need to come to terms with is that you are probably not going to get everything in the store, that you're not entitled to everything in the store anymore, and that FOMO, or fear of missing out, is a big part of driving sales, whether you like it or not. I am not advocating for any of this, I am simply saying that this is the reality. I did like the system we had before Season 7. If I played enough, I knew I was going to get everything or most things from the Eververse store from that season, and sure enough, I did. Nowadays, I look at my Season 7 tab and see that I have barely anything, realize that if I want everything I need to spend a lot of money, and just say, forget it. That could be because of the best of year 1 engram system that's in place though, kind of screwing things up. I'll buy the 1 or 2 things that I find cool, and that's it. And I highly suggest you get on that train too. Unfortunately, until we get more information, we don't know how the Bright Dust and Eververse economy is going to function. We don't know how much dust we'll get from bounties or how much we'll buy something from the store, so I'm sure we'll revisit this topic in another video. We're also going to see finishing moves, a new feature in Shadowkeep added to the Eververse store. Quote, players will likely earn the cosmetic finishing moves the same way they do with emotes, end quote. As long as all of the animation times are the same duration, no pay to go faster stuff, finishing moves will also fall into the cosmetic only category of Destiny, so prepare yourself for that. All in all, the Eververse store and items sold within it are sold because it works. It is a necessary evil for video games because things cost more money than they used to. Bungie is now an independent studio. You don't need to buy anything from the Eververse store. You can and should be angry that there aren't more cosmetic offerings done through gameplay. I know I am. I'm not happy about that at all. I would love way more ornaments and weapon skins that are done through challenges and not through wallets. And again, this video is not me advocating for microtransactions in Destiny or video games or whatever. This is just the way it is right now. This is how companies can sustain themselves. It's done because it works, and if it didn't work, no one would bother. Millions of dollars have been poured into research on this stuff. They know what's up. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.